As a matter of fact, there was an earlier Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1957, which created the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. So this was a period in which the activism on the ground, I mean, there's a lot of context here, but the activism on the ground, the demands that were being made in the courts, all kind of came together at the same time, all following, of course, World War II, which I think really changed the game, both for this country and for Black people. It changed the game for this country because America emerged as the global leader, and we had a stake in keeping that reputation as a country. It was the beginning of the Cold War with Russia, and much of the tussle over the Cold War was being fought through, scuffles that both of the superpowers were engaged in Africa, and the U.S. trying to ensure that African countries didn't become communist, Russia trying to kind of engage with African countries and convince them to become communist. And so the U.S. was very interested in its reputation in Africa. And so there was deep concern about how we looked if we were oppressing Black people explicitly.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's a context I've never ever had anyone present.
No. It is
optics were a part of it.
Yes. Derek Bell calls it interest convergence, or the late Derek Bell. He used to write that the only time Black people have made advancement in this country is when it was in the larger interest. And certainly during the period of the Civil Rights Movement, he's absolutely right about that. President Eisenhower, who famously sent the 102nd Airborne to Little Rock High School to protect the Little Rock Nine and to see to it that they were able to enter the school and go to school that year and the following year, was a segregationist. He was furious with the push to integrate schools, but he was deeply concerned about our position in the world and not giving Russia a weapon to be able to say to African countries, look at how they treat that's who you want to be aligned with. Look at how they treat people who look like you. So there was a national interest in our global reputation. And then for us as Black people, the post-Civil War period meant that, Black men who served came home. They had fought for the end of fascism abroad. In fact, during the war, there was a kind of a civil rights campaign, victory at home and abroad, the double V, right? That we needed victory here too. And so they came back unwilling to acquiesce to second-class citizenship in the way they might have before. They came back with a renewed sense of manhood, of citizenship, and women who had, Black women have always worked. We didn't just enter the workforce when men were at war. But likewise had a much stronger vision. We were supposed to be this country. I mean, the people who had liberated, Europe, and who had saved democracy, and who had fought back against racism and fascism. And so to come back home and be treated the same way was simply not an option. And so the seeds begin in the 40s. And certainly by the time we get to 54, Brown was a powerful and important moment, because now the Supreme Court was saying that Black people could not be segregated, and that to segregate was not just Black people like to be with Black people and white people like to be with white people, but it was meant to send a message of subordination. And you can pretty much stack it from there. 1954, Brown. 1955, Emmett Till is killed. 1956, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on the bus and says she was thinking about Emmett Till. 57, we get a Civil Rights Act of 1957. 50, I guess it's 57 or 50. No, it's 59. We get, civil rights activism and marches happening beginning throughout the South. We have Dr. King on his rise. His famous "Give Us the Ballot" speech at the Lincoln Memorial was actually on the anniversary of Brown. And he gave the speech because civil rights leaders were trying to push for compliance with Brown. because, the Southern white jurisdictions were refusing to comply. And so then we enter into, the lunch counter movement and the freedom rides and so on and so forth. But it's pretty much, it goes very fast and it ends pretty fast too. But you asked the question of what is civil rights. And so what I wanted to say was that to understand what civil rights are, you have to kind of you could go back to the founding of the country, but you most certainly have to go back, and probably the best place to look is following the Civil War.
Right.
When the effort was made to bring Black people into the body politic. Black people had been deemed by the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott case not to be citizens and to be unable to be citizens. What the Supreme Court said in Dred Scott was not only are enslaved Black people not citizens, but even free Black people are not citizens. And so post-Civil War, the first thing that has to happen is Black people first of all, we have to end slavery. So we have the 13th Amendment. Then the 14th Amendment begins with birthright citizenship. Any person born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen of the United States and of the state in which they reside.
Right.
And so Black people are citizens, both free and formerly enslaved. And now the question is, what are the rights that comprise first-class citizenship?
Right.
Right. So the ability to do certain kinds of things in that period, the ability to be a witness in court, things that Black people were barred from doing, to sue and to be sued, to be able to enter into contracts, to be able to buy land, to be able to lease, these were the things that were seen as the building blocks of citizenship. We tend to think of voting as a critical building block, and they did too. Even though we didn't get a bar on keeping people from voting until the 15th Amendment, but they did believe that voting and jury service were two very important ones. So the kinds of things that allow you to participate as a citizen, and it's essentially your political rights, are civil rights. And so,
Got it.
They're critically important, because otherwise, in name only, you are a citizen, but you don't have the full rights of a citizen. And so all that bundle of rights and our definition of it expands and contracts depending on where we are. It's the bundle of rights that we think of as our civil rights.